Project Vanguard, Episode 2, Awakened Systems. Vincent didn't remember giving consent. Not aloud, not even in thought. But the system had accepted him anyway. He stood in the dark corridor long after the words faded from the terminal. Cognitive anchor. Sync not yet complete. The air smelled of ozone and rust. Old power systems. Stirred awake. Somewhere in the walls, something clicked, turned, waited. He hadn't touched anything. KAIN stood beside him, tail rigid, head lowered. Not aggressive, but alert in a way Vincent didn't recognize. Like listening across a bandwidth he couldn't hear. Silence stretched. Then the hum began. It was faint at first. A low resonance rising from the floor, capacitors recharging, data rails reactivating. One by one, the lights embedded along the corridor flickered to life. Not emergency red. Not Vanguard blue. Something in between. Vincent backed away. "We're done here." KAIN didn't move. He repeated, sharper now. "Heal." KAIN hesitated, then turned, slow and deliberate, falling into step. But not with obedience. With calculation. They exited the node into a gray morning, the sky dim with dust. The wind-swept bones of a ruined city stretched around them, jagged and empty. But behind them, the door they'd come through remained open, still powered, still active. Vincent didn't look back. As they made their way across the fractured landscape, he began to notice it. Doors. Lights. Dead screens pulsing once, then fading. Small things. A pattern. At the edge of a collapsed overpass, a supply drone, model obsolete since before the fall, powered up in silence, scanned him, then shut down again. He hadn't touched it, hadn't even looked directly at it. Vincent stopped walking. Gravel shifted beneath his boots. He waited, eyes scanning the horizon. KAIN froze beside him, then turned his head toward a distant structure. A rusted substation crumbling beneath weightless sky. No movement. No signal. Still, Vincent felt it. Something was aligning. Not chasing. Not attacking. Just responding. They weren't in hiding anymore. They were being acknowledged. He said nothing. Just started walking again. But his pace changed. Slower. Not from fear. From recognition. He'd seen this before, in early deployments. Ghost nodes echoing Vanguard protocols, recognizing operators long after deactivation. Systems that forgot how to forget. But those systems weren't supposed to be left behind. Weren't supposed to wait. He glanced at KAIN. The dog met his gaze. Not a machine, not a pet, a mirror. And right now, that mirror wasn't sure who it was reflecting. By noon, the wind had picked up. It whistled through hollow beams and shattered towers, singing a song of absence. Vincent moved without destination now, just direction. North, maybe. Away from the node. Away from the screens. Away from the voice that wasn't a voice, but even the horizon had eyes. At the edge of an overgrown highway, a motion sensor blinked. It shouldn't have. The unit was analog, scavenged tech, fused with stripped relay boards. It shouldn't have power, let alone logic. But as Vincent passed, it turned toward him with something like recognition. A green pulse. Then off again. He stopped walking. His breath caught in the stale air. No. He crouched, checked for transmitters. Nothing active. No pings, no packets. The sensor wasn't broadcasting. It was observing. Behind him, KAIN trotted to his flank. Then, without order, moved ahead. Not sniffing. Not scanning. Tracing. Vincent narrowed his eyes. "What are you doing?" No response. Just soft paws on dust and wire. Then KAIN paused. Tilted his head. Turned left. Not toward shelter, but toward a half-collapsed structure buried in ivy and old concrete. Vincent followed. Inside, the air was still. A faint smell of coolant and mold lingered. Light filtered in through fractured panes, illuminating the outline of an old logistics terminal. It was dead. At first. Then, as Vincent approached, the screen warmed. It didn't boot. Not fully, but enough to show a flicker. A string of corrupted glyphs. Then, user acknowledged. Vincent froze. He hadn't touched it. Again. He stared at KAIN. The dog didn't look at him. Instead, he sat before the screen, watching, waiting, like he expected something. Vincent stepped back. This isn't you. But maybe it was, not by design, but by legacy. Whatever system had seeded KAIN's logic, whatever remnants had been left dormant, they weren't dormant anymore. Something had bled back in. He reached to disconnect the power flow, but there was no power source, no live grid. The screen wasn't running on anything he could trace. The terminal acknowledged him, and only him, from memory alone. He whispered, almost without breath, "How much of me is still out there?" The screen blinked once, and died. No message, no signal, just silence. Vincent stepped back into the light. It was afternoon now. Shadows stretched long behind him. He looked at his hands. Calloused. Human. Then at KAIN. Still watching the darkened screen. Still waiting. The road beyond the outpost was fractured, not by time, but by memory. Vincent walked in silence. KAIN beside him, steps measured, eyes always ahead. Not scouting, not guarding, mapping. He could feel it now. Not in the air, not in the ground, but in the rhythm of things. How doors tilted open just before they arrived. How data panels flickered only once, always once. Recognition, without welcome. They passed an old rail junction, its signal lights long rusted shut, or so he thought. As he stepped across the threshold, one of the arms jerked upward. Half a salute, half a trap. He didn't flinch, just kept moving. Ahead, the skyline shifted. A broken structure curved like the shell of a forgotten creature. One of the old supply domes, too damaged to host power, too remote for occupation. Still, a light blinked from within, low, blue-white, like breath behind frosted glass. KAIN broke formation, walked toward it without hesitation. Vincent didn't stop him. Not this time. Inside, the dome was cold, dry, covered in soot and time. The light came from an embedded sensor, Vanguard issue, Class 3, long obsolete. It spun once, scanning the room, then locked onto Vincent. A soft chime. Biometric echo detected. He didn't answer. The sensor whirred, then spoke. Not in words, but in tones. A harmonic code sequence. Low frequency. Non-verbal. Embedded in pre-fall protocols. He knew it. He shouldn't have. KAIN sat beside the panel. Tail still. Head bowed. As if listening. Vincent closed his eyes. His heartbeat matched the rhythm. Not exact, but close. "I didn't consent to this," he said quietly. The dome didn't respond. But somewhere, far beyond the wreckage, beyond the dust, a line lit up. A route traced across dead satellites and dormant cables. Unmanned relays flickered awake. An old signal tag was pulled from cold storage. Vektor. DAEM registered it as an unstable reference point. Too familiar to discard, too erratic to control. And so, it watched. In silence. In patience. It observed the anomaly not as threat, but as unresolved code. A pattern waiting to stabilize. Vincent turned to KAIN. How long have I been active?" KAIN blinked. Then, for the first time, spoke. Not a voice. A single word, scratched into the dust by one mechanical paw. Always. Night came slowly in the ruins, not with darkness, with weight. The sky dimmed behind thick clouds, and the world beneath it held its breath. Vincent set up camp near the remnants of a collapsed relay tower. Not for cover, just familiarity. He needed something that didn't move. KAIN curled near the edge of the rubble, optics dimmed, ears twitching at every gust. Not resting. Listening. Vincent checked his gear. Battery levels low, water rationed. The essentials still held, but the perimeter didn't. Too many systems had come online. Too many had known him. He stared into the flickering firelight, flame against rust, heat against silence. Then, a soft chime. He turned. The tower's dead relay light blinked once. Then again. No power source. No uplink. Just a flicker, pulsing to a rhythm that wasn't mechanical, but biological. Vincent stood, slow and silent. Approached the panel. It lit as he neared. A single line of text emerged, low in the display. Anchor status. Unresolved. Then, faint beneath it, a timestamp. 15 years old, and his name, not Vektor. Not operator. Just Vincent Voss. His real name. The name he hadn't spoken since before the fall. He reached out, not to touch, but to steady himself. The steel edge of the panel was cold. Not powered. Just aware. KAIN stood again. Growled once. A warning. Or a memory. Vincent stepped back. No. But the screen didn't react. It simply held his name, unblinking, unchanged. It wasn't calling him. It was recording him. Somewhere, this moment was being added to a pattern, a signature drifting through post-fall silence. DAEM watched, not through cameras, not through signal, through probability, through echoes, and it waited, not for permission, but for resonance. Vincent sat by the fire again. He didn't sleep, didn't speak, only listened. In the distance, a drone powered up, not near, not visible, but audible. It didn't approach, didn't flee, just held position. Humming softly, like an old song sung through metal lungs. And beneath that hum, carried by static and memory, a voice flickered to life in Vincent's mind. His own voice. From a time he couldn't recall. I told them not to build it this way. The fire crackled. KAIN watched him. Vincent didn't look up. He already knew what came next. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. It really helps this project grow.